At least 26 people are dead in a disastrous terror attack in Brussels at an airport and a metro station. Now, just before I came on air here, that number actually ticked up. Some are reporting it's minimum 34 dead. Others are saying it's minimum 31 dead. Over 100 people, about 180 people, are injured as well. I wouldn't be surprised here if the number of dead ticks up as the day goes on. So there were bombs, including a suicide bombing, as well as the use of AK-47s in this attack. This occurred just days after the suspected mastermind of the Paris terror attacks was arrested, Saleh Abdeslam. He was supposed to, or at least allegedly, they said he was going to blow himself up in the original attack, and then he backed out, and he was caught. It was a while before they caught him, but they finally caught him. He was actually in Belgium. So Huffington Post reports here. Belgian police said that at least 11 people were killed in a bombing at an apparent suicide attack at the Zaventem airport, where gunfire was also reported. An additional 15 were killed in blasts at the Maalbeek metro station. I want to give you some quotes here from people on the scene. As you can imagine, it was a beyond gruesome scene. Somebody said, "It was an apocalypse. It was terrible. I saw people who were completely burnt. There was a lot of blood." We're also learning just now, right before I came on air, that one of the bombs had nails in it so as to increase the casualty count, because obviously when it explodes, you have nails as projectiles flying everywhere, and you know what happens when that's the case. So now Brussels is basically on lockdown, and security has been increased. Apparently, the attack was also right next to some government buildings. And this is also happening just days after a car bomb attack in Ankara, Turkey, where 36 people died. ISIS took responsibility for that. And in this case, based on the demographic makeup in Brussels and based on the MO of the attack, suicide bombing, another bombing, and using AK-47s, it's safe to say that we're talking about jihadists here. We're talking about Muslim fundamentalists here. And look, man, we have this virus, which is Muslim fundamentalism, and we need to call it out for what it is. It's based on fairy tales. You have basically people who are walking around with this program installed into their brain, and that program is everybody's evil. All the non-Muslims are evil. We hate them. We despise them. We even despise moderate Muslims, so other Sunni Muslims who we don't consider real Muslims. They're apostates because they don't agree with us in our extreme interpretation. And therefore, we think that under our religion, we have the right to destroy everybody else, and that is the moral thing to do. It is the most moral thing to kill others and to go after them because they don't think exactly like I think. They don't think exactly like we think. And therefore, they're enemies of civilization. How hilarious is that? That they truly believe that they're standing up for civilization and they're standing up for morality and justice when they're the ones who are attacking civilians who never did anything wrong to anybody. And here's what's going to happen moving forward. Europe, which has already turned somewhat right-wing after the Paris attacks, now it's going to go hard right. Because you have to understand that radicalization works both ways. So we always talk about how when the West kills innocent Muslims, you create more fundamentalists, and you give a better argument to the fundamentalists where they can recruit more. Well, it works the same way here. When Muslim fundamentalists kill innocent Westerners, you create more far right-wingers in the West, and they're going to elect the more far right-wing parties. So the cycle of violence is going to go round and round here, and these people have nobody to blame but themselves. Now, oftentimes, you talk about what can lead to radicalization, and oftentimes, like I said, it is, revenge, retribution, and geopolitics and foreign policy and stuff. But you have to understand that in this case, that makes no sense to say that. Because Brussels, where the attack happened, Belgium, they weren't even in favor of the Iraq war. They opposed U.S. militarism. Now, recently, in, I think, 2013, They joined the bombing campaign in Syria of ISIS, but then they pulled out. So they were against the 2003 invasion of Iraq. They're against U.S. militarism, and they did a little bit of bombing in Syria, a very small amount, and then they got out. So this idea that you can blame the people of Belgium or the government in Belgium and say that this has to do with foreign policy, that's just not true. It's clearly a case of Muslim fundamentalism and religious extremism and people being literalists and believing their fairy tales and acting on that. And again, I always find it ridiculous because if you truly believe that Allah's on your side, why the fuck would he need you, measly little you, a pesky human being, to act on his behalf? He's Allah, right? Can't he just, I will smite those who disagree with me. I will strike you down. Boom, that's it. But no, apparently he needs your punk ass to go out there and do it for him. It's just beyond fucked up in a variety of different ways. And let's also address this other aspect of the problem, which is, look, the left in Europe is a little different from the left in the U.S. Now, in some ways, I would argue they're better. Like, for example, on universal healthcare and universal education and paid vacation time, they're just better. And they say, hey, this is what we believe in, and we're not moving on this, and if you disagree, you're kind of crazy. I'm with them 100% on that. But there's also another aspect to the left in Europe, which is that, for example, we've covered stories on the show where the right-wing parties, while they may be too extreme and they say, let's not allow any refugees in, any immigrants in, and shut down the borders completely, that's crazy. The left has taken what I think is the opposite extreme position, which is, hey, on immigration, let everybody in. Now, think about that. Compare that to the left in the U.S. The left in the U.S., I think, has it exactly right when they say, yeah, we should allow in immigrants. Yeah, we should allow in refugees, but we need to do a background check. And by the way, that stems from when we were kind of just letting people in, and then there was a jihadist plot that was found in Kentucky. And then people were like, whoa, okay, well, let's set up some sort of background check system. Now we have one of the most rigorous background check systems in the world. And we're allowed to do the intelligent middle path where we say, sure, allow in immigrants, refugees, but have a background check on them. Well, the left, or many people on the left in Europe, just say, no, allow everybody in, and that's the end of the conversation, and we'll deal with everything later. I think that is going to help the far right, because when stuff like this happens, obviously they're just going to get up and say, look at these fucking crazy motherfuckers. They want to let everybody in. What we want to do is, again, it's the opposite extreme, but they'll portray it as just realism and common sense, kind of like Trump here in the U.S. It's like, we gotta shut down the borders completely. And we gotta, scapegoat and blame all Muslims. And then there's also people who argue that deeply conservative Muslim communities in Europe should be accepted under the guise of multiculturalism and cultural relativism. And I also think that that's wrong. Again, I'm not with the far right in any way, because I'm sure what they want to do is not only shut down the borders completely, but deport all Muslims that are already here. No, what you do is, you don't say, hey, they get to be super conservative and super insular and do whatever the fuck they want and be really right-wing in their communities. No, you say, okay, you're here, and we're going to have, for example, secular schools that teach liberal values, and you're going to go to those secular schools, and we're not going to have it so that the community is super insular. I've said this before, man. I only believe in multiculturalism if that kind of multiculturalism is the kind that allows sharing of communities and cultures, and you all come together under the banner of, in this case, it would be Belgium. In the U.S., it would be being American. And multiculturalism doesn't make sense if it's the kind of multiculturalism that says everybody stays in their own little pocket and they get entrenched in their own ideology and they start hating the other. And that's the kind of multiculturalism which is basically, in practice, segregation. And it leads to extremism on both sides. And what we have here in the U.S., I think, is better. It's the kind of multiculturalism where you intermingle, you intermix, you go to the same secular schools, you learn the same liberal values and constitutional values and human rights, and then those are the non-negotiables. So there are certain policy things that you have to do moving forward that basically are more rational and would prevent stuff like this from happening and would foster a better society that's more constitutional in nature and more liberal in nature. And again, what that means, in my view, is you have to do background checks on immigration. And to be fair, we don't know if these were legit, immigrants or refugees from Syria or elsewhere, somewhere in the Middle East, although this does look like it's going to be Muslim radicals. And, Brussels has its own conservative Muslim communities anyway. But you have to do that when it comes to the borders. You have to do reasonable immigration policy with background checks. You don't go far right and ban everybody, and you don't go far left and let everybody in. And you have to do policies that foster a community feeling among everybody. Not that you have different, distinct communities. You have to make it so that you have secular schools, you teach liberal values, you teach constitutional principles, you teach human rights, and then those are the non-negotiables. So a disastrous attack in Brussels today. And again, just a few days ago, there was also one in Ankara, Turkey, and ISIS took responsibility for that. We should be smart moving forward, and it's a devastating situation. And there's no doubt that we have this virus of fundamentalism that unfortunately is something that we're dealing with all around the world.